The market is continuing to change. What are your actions for opportunities? Stay tuned. Welcome to this week's edition of Note School TV, where every week we bring you the most amazing content and typically the most amazing guests. But this week is the fan favorite. It is our monthly update. So we have got we've got a lot of information, a lot of what's going on in the real estate world, the note world, the mortgage lending world, and all of that for you today. But before Eddie and I jump into that, three things. Number one, hit that bell notification. Boom, go ahead and hit it. Go ahead and like what you see today. And if you have not already subscribed to the Note School TV channel, you want to make sure and do so, because you do not want to miss 1 minute of content from Note School TV. So stay tuned, stay plugged in. When do we go live? Well, it's every Wednesday at 11:05 Central Time. Also, please don't forget to send in your comments. We have so many of you now who are commenting on our guests and what they're learning. And guys, we love the feedback. It gives us a lot of information about where your head's at and really what you're looking for as well. So please do that. And if you would like to learn more about Note School and what we do at Note School, simply go to noteschool.com/TV. Again, noteschool.com/TV. And we would love to have a conversation with you and get you in one of our upcoming master classes. Also, just make sure and continue to hang in there with us. And with that, let's get started. We have a lot to cover today, as we always do. So let's bring on our Chief Visionary Officer, all-around good guy, our fearless leader, founder of Note School, Mr. Eddie Speed.
Good morning, Joe. How are you?
You know what? I am doing well. It's a beautiful day in South Florida. Got a little bit of a cold still. We had 50 degrees last night, but I see you've got a hat tip on today.
Oh my God. I don't know how you made it. By the way, for those of you that don't know, I live in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Right.
Joe lives in a little town between Fort Myers or Naples and Fort Lauderdale, a little country town called Okeechobee, but it is way South Florida. Y'all have the largest freshwater lake.
Second freshwater lake in the U.S. and our population of dairy and beef cattle well exceed our population at about 65,000 on the cattle range and about 45,000 on the people range.
Anyway, we have a lot of fun with Joe and so yeah, Joe, it's cold here, kind of wintry up here. We hadn't had much of a winter. Kind of hot and cold, right? But we had got winter right now, so yeah, I get to wear my warm stuff, and I kind of like that sometimes. I don't actually like cold weather, but I like wearing warm stuff. So
I do too. So let me say this one thing before we get started, Eddie. I want everybody to congratulate Eddie. He has his first granddaughter.
That's the truth.
Evelyn Ann.
That's her. That is Evelyn Ann Speed, and my son Wood and his wife Tessa had their third. They had 2 little boys, and so now we've got a little girl in the mix. Got another little girl due in March, so the Speeds are catching up with the girl thing.
That's true. We're having our first grandchild in April. So, yeah. Eddie, I was down in Fort Lauderdale this weekend, helping put together baby beds and dressers.
It's a fun time wherever you're at in your life. Joe and I always are encouraging you to enjoy your family. This is the great gift that God gives us, that we get to go spend that time. So thank you for mentioning that. Joe, I just got to do this presentation prior to today. I got to go do this for the National Association of Real Estate Investors. They're leaders.
Yep.
And I had over 100 people on the call. So these are people that run real estate investment groups around the country. And I got to share it with them. And Joe, I'll tell you how I started out. I said, I don't want this presentation to appear emotional. I just want it to appear factual. So every statement I make is going to be supported by data and information. And I think we're going to do the same thing today. It's not a terribly glowing report unless, Joe, you can change.
Unless you can change. Yeah.
All right,
Amen
let's talk
to
about
that, brother. All right, Eddie. So this came out a couple of weeks ago, and I saw this, and so U.S. is suffering from the second biggest home price correction since World War II. Eddie, World War II ended in 1945, right?
Yeah, Joe, I'm going to be honest with you. I think this is a little too dramatic.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call a spade here, and I love Fox, and I'm all about it. But I don't really think that that's a fair assessment. I lived through 2008, and I saw people in California lose 60% of their value in of their homes, and I just don't believe that's a realistic story. I think a bigger problem is coming than a lot of people are thinking, but I don't think it's this.
Yeah.
Now. I'm trying to defuse the emotion a little bit here, right, Joe?
Yeah, and I think it just goes to the fact that again that people are just a little bit antsy, right? So
let me say this about Chairman Powell.
Yeah,
Chairman Powell has mentioned on several occasions the appreciation in real estate as being a key contributor to inflation.
Oh God, yeah.
So his intent is to reverse some values in real estate. I don't think you can interpret it any other way. And so, Eddie, are you saying that Chairman Powell is intentionally creating an environment where real estate goes down in value? And the answer is, I think that's absolutely true.
Well, that was the key point. And Eddie, we both know that the only way that prices could have gone up the way they did was because we had a time of a false time, really, of very, very, very low interest rates. That's what happened, right?
One thing about YouTube, Joe, they can go backwards. And when some of this stuff was going crazy, and you and I would do a market update the end of every month,
right?
Then we would just sort of smile and say, it is what it is, right? We weren't saying it wasn't happening. We were sort of saying, as old guys with some gray hair, this thing can change.
Well, let's talk a little more about the housing market. So the housing market continues to see an increase, according to Realtor.com, 54.7% year over year, ending in December. And remember, guys, this is January. We're now getting all of this, all of year-end stuff. So, Eddie, what it's saying is 54.7% of homes for sale in the U.S. Were 54% more homes for sale in the U.S. And it means it was, you think that's a huge number, but basically, Eddie, that's 244,000 more houses in the U.S. So what we're really looking at over here is somewhere between, what is that, 1.1 million to, so let's call it 1.5 million homes for sale in the United States, which is really way down from the 2 to 2.5 million that we normally see.
Joe, what we see in this era, and not just for the last month or two, but over the last few years, like two couple of years, let's call it.
Yeah,
we've seen a gigantic decrease in the inventory of houses. What we're seeing right now is that while inventory is really low, demand is even lower.
That's right.
That's what if you want to kind of summarize it and say, what does this mean? I think it's a fair assessment.
Yep, for sure. So price growth again in December. So look at it was up, according to Realtor.com, it was up 8.4% in this December versus last December. So we're still, well, there it is, about 400,000 being the average of house pricing in the U.S. And of course, that's down from, June of 2020 when it was just absolutely crazy and continuing to go up. So that's what it looks like.
Yeah, but I want to make sure, Joe, this isn't like that increased 8.4% in the month of December.
It did not.
What this is saying is it increased year over year. So prices went up, but they went down since the peak in June. You look at that yellow line there. Take your marker there, Joe, so everybody can see that. This is clear that there's the market is turning. So we're not trying to be optimistic or pessimistic. Let me say something. I addressed an organization that has 40,000 members. I addressed their leaders just in the last couple of days. I got to go speak to their leaders about the condition of the market. And what I said was this, and what I'm going to say to everybody is this. This should mean big opportunity for people that know how to buy assets in distressed markets. That's what really our industry is. We're not a perfect market investment strategy. We're a distressed asset strategy. And so this isn't like doom and gloom. We're showing you the market so you become very laser focused on how to make adjustments to how you seize the opportunity.
And Eddie, we got to remember that the market was increasing 18 to 25, in some cases 30% back then. So that's significant that it is just at 8.4%, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So this a record share of home sellers are giving concessions to buyers. Eddie, this is kind of a new phenomenon coming in towards the end of the year here, where 42% of the homes that sold had a concession. And then we look at the different lines. The green line had a concession and sold below asking. That yellow line had a concession and a price drop. And then the red had a concession, price drop, and was sold below asking price. So a lot going on there. People are just, it's a little more difficult because of affordability.
Okay, and the point is when you're running comparable sales or you're running assessments as to values, if they're making concessions, they're keeping the price up, but they're taking the money out of the deal in another way, right? So just be aware that this is a reflection of more of a trend in the market, more of a decrease, Joe, than maybe sales price shows.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's seller paying closing costs. Maybe they're having to put a new roof on when the roof's iffy. All of those things, those are all concessions to a seller, which can add up to big dollars.
That's it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about mortgage lending. This is what you and I talked about this last week. Markets are getting rocked as Fed is likely to push rates higher. And Eddie, let's talk a little bit about, this is the Fed funds rate down here. This isn't the mortgage interest rate.
Yeah, this is the rate that banks charge. The Fed charges banks. And
Right.
So if the bank is paying that rate, then they've got to go lend the money out at a higher rate.
Right.
Right. And so, so to give you guys a sense of Fed funds, Joe, a year and a half ago were like almost at zero.
Yes.
And so this shows you an incredible increase in money. This is not long-term mortgage rates, but this does affect. But anytime the Fed is raising their rates, it's sort of foolish to think that long-term mortgage rates, now they'll go up and down like week to week, but they're not fixing a trend in a way different direction. As long as the Fed's promising they're going to continue to increase rates, and that's basically what he's saying. Right.
Absolutely. And we look at this, Eddie. And so that spread between, and I did 680 through 699. And then I said, okay, to get a 6.4 rate, you've got to have an 800 plus credit score. And this is from yesterday or this morning, I think. Yeah, I did this morning. So it probably was from yesterday. But you can see that 4.5 to 5, that's about 2 to 3% is what that looks like. As far as the spread between the Fed funds rates and the actual rates that you can go get.
Joe, I'm going to make a point, though. That 6.4% interest, isn't that the note rate? That's not the effective rate?
The APR is what you're trying to say.
Correct. It's not it. That's the note rate, not the APR rate.
That's right. And you may be having to do a buy down. You may, as far as points,
Well,
you may.
APR is generally going to be about 1.5.
Yep.
Point to 1.5 more than the actual interest rate written on the note, because you have fees at closing, and that's what those calculate, points and fees related to the closing. Junk fees, I've heard them called, Joe.
Well, I've always called them that, right? So that's what that's what it really looks like when you get down into it. So yeah, you've got to be perfect, right, to get a little bit of a lower rate there. But that's what it is, right? So we talked a little bit about this on the show last week, but I wanted to just bring this up in the monthly update, because we have, the viewership here is crazy, right? So talk about Wells Fargo, Eddie, and really
crazy is in a lot of people, right, Jeff? Not crazy is in, yeah. I have a friend that has a significant amount of assets under management, mega billions.
Yep.
And they are in the mortgage related industry, and he's a personal friend. And I had a conversation with him, and I said, this announcement of Wells Fargo, what do you think that statement makes? And he said, I think it's a statement of the shot heard around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I think he said that is because I think he has said this is a reflection of the industry, not just a reflection of some issue that Wells Fargo has had.
No.
Basically, I think, Joe, it's pretty simple. They got in trouble. They got in trouble with the CFPB, the regulatory authority that controls fair lending, right? So the CFPB levied a big fine against them, which apparently they kind of knew was coming.
Right.
And I think they looked at the production, the profit on the loans they were making, and they said, this isn't a good time to continue.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think, Joe, if you want to get down right to the heart of it, I think this is a reflection of a lot of other loan originators to come.
Well, Eddie, it's funny you should say that, because I took some notes here. JP Morgan in the last 30 to 45 days has laid off 1,000 people. Rocket has laid off a couple thousand, 10% of their 20,000 staff are employees. Better.com over 3,000. Mr. Cooper over 1,500. Mortgage Servicing, Finance of America ended their kind of origination piece in residential. Loan Depot 4,800, and New American Funding about 1,000 people. So that's, I mean, it's not just Wells Fargo. I think it's a state of what's going on in the industry.
Yeah. To be clear about this, guys, this is not since the downturn that they've done this. This is in the last month.
That's right.
Okay. This is just the last month's reductions. So understand that I think people pretty much, Joe, the number I hear from the most seasoned, credible loan officers, guys with a big book, great reputation, should be way better than the average guy. Right. They're consistently quoting, and I've had about 5 different people, all of which with significant good residual measure. They say their production is off 60%.
Yes.
That's kind of the number they're telling me. So I think that matches with the statistics, and I think it's a reflection of things to come. We'll see who's next.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of people that are really seasoned in the space were not surprised to see Wells make this decision. Mortgage credit availability ended the year, Joe, at 103. So go back over there on this chart, Joe, and mark just under about 185, just somewhere in there. And go on that chart and about 185. Okay. Now we're at 103. Okay. So what that means is 103 is about an 80-point drop, or call it about 40% plus of what it took to get a mortgage beforehand. So understand that it's really, really critical that we understand that we don't just have a cost of credit issue. we have an availability of credit issue. We have two things that hit us at the same time. And Joe, if you don't think that matters, what do you think's happened to residential real estate?
Very true.
That's exactly what's happened.
Well, and then as you have less lenders in the marketplace, then you have, let's see, I don't know why that popped up there. I hope this doesn't shut me down. It did. Let me pop it right back up. Sorry, guys.
So here's the point I want to say. The point I want to say is when I go back and look, this is now my 6th recession. When I go back and look at my 6th recession, two things have happened. One of two, and sometimes two. We either had a cost of credit issue, making homes unaffordable, or a lack of credit, making underwriting impossible to qualify.
Right.
Right. And when you have one of those two issues, this has been primarily the triggering event that has triggered every cycle in real estate I've experienced. I started in 1980 in a real estate recession.
Absolutely.
We've now entered what I believe easily could qualify for a real estate recession now. Real estate values are sliding, and this is why. So this is a significant variable in the market that will affect us. We just are trying to understand why. How to react to it is pretty simple. Creative financing.
That's right.
Creative financing has been the solution, and this gives somebody an inordinate advantage.
All right, so Eddie, let's talk about the rental market here. So this is just came out. So the average renter in the U.S. now spends 30% of their income in for rents, right? So 20 years ago, it was about 23%. Then 10 years ago, it was about 25%. And now we're at an all-time high of 30%. And that's what it looks like.
Well, Joe, one of the things that I think clearly happened in the market is that we were seeing rents escalating at a point where they were hitting dramatic affordability issues. Because I went to all these real estate events and everybody said, rents are just going to keep going to whatever. And I said, no, they're going to go to where they're not affordable. That's where they'll go.
And I checked those. All of those are Florida cities. And you know what people are doing in Florida, Eddie? They're blaming people from up north of coming down to Florida and driving the rents up.
Yeah. Yeah. The locals now are tired of competing for the rentable property.
Yep.
All right. What's the trend in rents? There you go.
So, there it is. So the rent growth slowed for the 7th straight month. So rent growth slows to 5%. And so it's been steadily, as you can see here, it's just been as we've gone along the year here, it's just there's where we ended up. And what that really means overall is that we're just a tick under $2,000 now as far as the average.
So, Joe, does that mean that we're seeing a decline in what you can rent for? Or just a lesser amount going up?
A lesser amount going up is what I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely what it says. The point is I think that reality, I think this is data that is sourced in a way. I don't think this represents the amateur landlord. I think the amateur landlord has gone the other way. And you say, Eddie, why do you think that? Because we train a lot of people that deal with landlords. Mm-hmm. They're saying, well, I tried to rent my house for this and I found out the market wouldn't tolerate it.
Yep.
So maybe they put it on the market for rent, but it didn't actually rent.
Yeah. Well, the rental market is in a state of flux, and we are going to see that. We're seeing decline in 14 major U.S. markets.
Yep.
So that's what it looks like. So this is a big number here. And when I saw this headline and then looked more into it, and this came from Newsweek a few days ago, America's credit card debt is spiraling towards $1 trillion.
Joe, I'm going to go back to the first excuse me, the 2020 number, right? And all of a sudden we were seeing, into 2019 and into when the virus started, like people weren't using their credit cards near as much. And so that number was going down.
Right here.
Right. And that was the lowest point, right? In 2021. That wasn't what started it, but that's the lowest it got.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, as we started seeing people's government check, not getting a government check, then what happened? We started reversing, and now people are borrowing money on their credit cards. Now, I want to say that, Joe, this, in one sense, we say it's alarming, but in another sense, we're kind of back to where we were in 2019.
Yeah.
The credit card debt number is back to where we kind of were. So it's not like we've never seen this happen before, but the reality is it's an awareness of people are paying for things that they were paying for cash for. They're now paying for it with a credit card again.
That's true. And we'll see how this kind of, of course, depending on who you talk to, inflation is kind of, it's not going up. It's not really going crazy down, but we're seeing a lot at play here, and we'll see how this plays out over the rest of over this first part of the year. But yeah.
Isn't that what the president said?
Well, you got a pair of Joes here.
He said the inflation rate wasn't going up because guys said, well, it's not going down either. So I just curious. That's where you got
yeah. So Eddie, we're going to wrap up today with non-performing loans. And so we've been talking about this for a little while, and we're seeing what is going on in the marketplace here as we move into 2023.
Well, Joe, take your highlighter and just highlight that yellow highlighter and highlight the very bottom line there, because I think that's red. Yeah, that's definitely not going to work.
Can't see that one. Okay,
that ain't going to happen.
Okay, let's do yellow.
So here's the bottom line. We have been looking at a pent-up inventory of non-performing notes that grew during the virus, and it is definitely a factor. Bottom line is, Joe, we have 1,800,000 loans that aren't paying. Now that's everything from 30 days delinquent
in foreclosure,
10 years delinquent. Okay. When you look at loans that are delinquent, the soft collections, meaning 30, 60, 90 days delinquent, there's a number in that, Joe. And that number is, 700,000 loans.
Yep.
Okay. Which means the loans left, I don't see them not going to foreclosure.
Yeah.
Or not going to default. They just become more and more and more delinquent. And you're saying, well, this is what you guys were saying this time last year. That's true. And basically, the mortgage lenders spent a year trying to figure out a way to modify these loans and get them current. And by the way, Joe, this number did not drop much.
No.
About 200,000 loans went away. There were about 2 million. Now they're 1.8 million.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden, it showed us what we were kind of suspicious of, which is that you need to really realize that this pin-up inventory is not, this foreclosures, they're coming over the mountain. It's happening. We've been saying it, but it is definitely coming over the mountain. And yes, we're going to see record high foreclosure filings month after month, quarter after quarter. I mean, there's no way it can't be, because it's finally coming to fruition.
Right. Talk a little bit about the prepayments as well, Eddie, and what that means.
Prepayments just simply means that people aren't refining, paying off their existing mortgage.
Right.
So portfolios have, we call it roll off. They have almost no roll off in paying off the loans. And that's just a reflection of lenders aren't getting any refi business.
That's right.
And that roll off could either be from a sale of a property or it could be from a refi.
Right.
So that tells you that if you're looking at production. Now this, Joe, this is an interesting stat here because it's through the end of last year. And you do see from 150,000 foreclosures filings to 325,000. Joe, in 2023, it's going to make 2022 look like a shorty.
Yes. Well, you've got, over in here in 2020 and then 2021, the numbers were there was 8.5 million people in forbearance and all of those things. And there was a foreclosure moratorium, right? You couldn't do it. And then that didn't fall off until the beginning of this year, until the beginning of 2022. And then the system was so backlogged. Yeah, that's going to be that number is it's only going to go one way, and that's up.
Yeah, and so we are seeing it. We're buying more non-performing notes in the first quarter of January than we bought in the last 5 years prior.
Right.
I mean, literally. So it's the inventory is coming over the mountain. Most of these loans have been filed for foreclosure, and then the lenders are selling them after they've initiated foreclosure action. So they're not taking them all the way to whatever. Right. Joe, I'm doing a presentation on non-performing notes somewhere, virtually or to some audience. Somebody in note school is teaching on this at least once a week right now.
Yep.
I mean, we went a year and a half and didn't teach on it.
Yeah, we did. We really did. And then, I taught on it Sunday. You'll talk about it again this week. And Friday, I guess it was. Yeah, I was talking about it. Yeah.
So these are all the things that happen in the market. So I want to leave you guys with kind of a summary. The market is what the market is. Let me ask you a question. Are people going to make an opportunity out of this market? Right. Does this market circumstance, is it going to cause certain people that act in a certain way to make significant gains and have a significant strategy that becomes extremely profitable in a distressed market? You think that's true, Joe?
Oh, absolutely. It's what Eddie, and we are doing we're working every day to educate the folks that that are in our note school family, right? Our note school ecosystem. We've been preparing them for a long time, and now we're seeing this, and we're seeing what's happened, and it's right there. And that's why this end of January report is very important for everybody to realize that, understand what it is, and you'll go, wow, in a good way.
So what we're saying to you guys is we're now we're asked to speak, or we're asked to address, or students are reaching out to us saying, I want information, understanding about what these reverse market, these distress market action steps are. And so we're taking that really seriously, and we're teaching on that a lot. We're very aware of what the charts are saying and what the market's doing. We're trying to make you very aware of what to go do to go seize this opportunity. Somebody's going to make a lot of money in this, Joe. The question is, who's going to make a lot of money? And I'm going to say the people that are clearly aware of the proper actions to take. That's it.
This is the current market condition, and market conditions can surely make a lot of difference in your net worth, for sure.
All right.
Well,
anybody wanting any further information on that, obviously you go to noteschool.com/TV, and there's some channels there that we can hopefully connect you. And depending on what your level of interest is the kind of where we might go with that. Joe, great job of scraping this data. As I said, I appreciate that. I got to go present essentially the same thing to a group of real estate investment club leaders the other day. And so it's always helpful, Joe, when you know the facts, you can make a lot better decisions.
Well, that's for sure. And Eddie, what's our motto here at Note School?
Our motto at Note School is we show you how to close more deals. And I think in this market, that is going to have a point on the end of it.
Absolutely. Exclamation point.
That's it.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, noteschool.com/TV, and we will see you same time, same place next week.
Thank you
Thanks a
very
lot. Have a
much.
great week.
Bye-bye.